Hi, I would like to welcome you today to our presentation on effective job management for the oil field service industry. I am Keith Greeno from Seamless Solutions, and today what we wanted to do is deal with just an overview of the service management and how it can help you make your effective job management happen, and specifically for the oil and gas industry and the specific requirements that are required by the oil industry. So just a little bit of housekeeping is if you do want to ask any questions, please type it into the question box and I will address it at that time. Thank you. All right, for the agenda today, what we wanted to talk about is the workflow, and so effective job management from a workflow perspective, and we'll just be discussing the various pieces that are required to make this work correctly. Then we want to talk about some specific industry issues that are happening in the service industry, specifically for the oil and gas industry, and so we just want to be discussing those. And then what we want to deal with is just how service management solutions can help solve the issues that we're having in the industry, and we're going to be doing that from the perspective of the workflow management, which is the initialization, planning, executing, monitoring, closing, and continuing process, improvement process format. And then we want to discuss, is it right for you? And so is this the correct solution? And it really depends on cost benefits, because don't do any of these solutions unless they make you money, and then we'll follow it up with questions. All right? So let's just talk about job management, job workflow management. And so what we're really talking about is these 6 steps. And really what we need to do is make sure that we take each one of these steps and execute them as effectively as we possibly can. We need to do them well. There's a saying out there that says, amateurs practice until they get it right. Professionals practice until they cannot get it wrong. And what we want to do is focus on this so that we are doing each one of these steps as a professional, because this is where we really start to make additional money for our companies and things just start to come into control. So from initialization, what we're talking about, this is the setup of the customer. This is the setup of the sites for the oil field sites and the well sites and that type of thing. So all of that setup is happening at the initialization stage. Then we move over into the planning, another important step in here, because this is where we want to take a look at, what work needs to get done, when does it need to get done, who's going to be doing the work, what resources do we require to put that in. And so we're going to be taking a look at this from the service management solutions and just how they can help with this planning process. Then discussing executing, and at the executing stage, this is where we're actually accumulating all of the time cards. This is where we're bringing in all of the information for the labor and what phase is it going to. This is where we bring in what pieces of equipment are being used. This is when we allocate, the subcontractors and the inventory that's being used on each one of the individual jobs at each one of the well sites. So, and how do we make that effective? And then moving over into the controlling. And you can look at it as controlling and or monitoring. But really, this is where we can take a look at all of the information which is coming in on a particular job and see what we're doing with it, right? How are we doing, as far as the estimates, comparing the estimates to the actual labor that's being charged to that, is it accurate? And so this all becomes a circle, because all plans are not absolutely perfect. And so therefore we come back and we say, okay, we do the planning, then we move over to the executing, then we move over to the controlling, and it becomes a continuous circle where we move from one to the other, and we continually keep doing this again and again and again until the job moves down and becomes complete. And so at that completion stage, this is where, okay, let's take a look at the invoicing, so the final invoicing for the job. This is where we take a look at the report and say, okay, did we make or lose money on the job? And so this is this final wrap-up where we can take a look and say, as a total all-in cost, what was the revenue earned, what were the actual costs earned, did we make or lose money? And then we move over into probably the most important step of all, and this is the continuous improvement. And at the continuous improvement stage, this is where we take a look and say, okay, listen, what did we do right? What did we do wrong? How can we improve on the job? Because before we move into the next job, which moves us up into this initialization again, then we want to take a look and say, okay, listen, by the way, we underquoted on this, so therefore increase this quote. So this continuous improvement is absolutely critical for any of our companies to move forward. This is the best way for us to improve our processes, is to continually review and make sure that we're doing them correct. Okay? All right. So let's talk about industry issues. And these are not all-encompassing, but these are the industry issues that are happening that we see in the oil and gas sector specifically. Okay? So they certainly involve some of the other service companies, but this is specific for the oil and gas. And so understand, there's a lot of oil and gas servicing companies out there that do not cost their jobs accurately. They're doing it on spreadsheets. They've got simply accounting where they just do not get accurate project costing and job costing to see what's going on. And so therefore, how do they know which jobs they're making money on? How do they know which phases they're making money on? And so this is something that is not acceptable over the long haul for any organization. And this ties in with the project managers not being held accountable, the next one. And so what we hear out there is, okay, we've got project managers that are out in the field, but really what they say is, well, how do I know what's going on with the job? I don't know how much labor, I don't know how much inventory is being charged against the job. So therefore, you can't hold me really accountable. My job is just to go out there and do the best I can without any information. And so we have to hold the managers accountable, because that's the only way to improve. If we can sit down and have a review with these managers after and see what they did right, what they did wrong, this is that improvement step that we're talking about in that workflow. Then difficult to schedule employees and equipment. And so understand, I mean, what we've got out there is we've got this scheduling of all these equipment. The oil companies want to have tanks moved, and they need it done on July the 15th. Well, I need to put that into my schedule now. I have to know what kind of equipment am I going to actually be required to put on that for that particular time frame. And so the point is that if I can schedule those employees, if I can schedule that equipment, or if I can schedule the subcontractors, and I can do it in advance, then I cannot double book them, or at least becomes much more difficult to do so, right? And so what we want to do is how do we take a look and solve this scheduling issue? And then the next one being the collection of time, charges, and inventory. And so again, what we've got is, how do we collect this easily? Because we're doing manual time cards. We're doing manual sheets with all the inventory we're allocating to a job. We're doing all of these miscellaneous charges for permits and stuff. And how do we associate that back to a job so that we've got all of those items costed so we can see whether we're making or losing money? And then difficult to invoice with the correct pricing. Critical in the oil and gas industry, because the oil companies are extremely, I wouldn't say anal, but they're definitely backwards a little bit with regards to their invoicing, because they want detailed invoicing. And if the invoicing is not correct, they send back the whole invoice and they make it happen so that you will not get paid until the invoicing is correct with the correct pricing at the agreements that they want. So we're going to be discussing that a little bit. But understand, it's absolutely critical, especially in the oil and gas industry, to make sure that your invoicing is accurate, or they will hold back the payments. And these guys tend to be running at 90-day payment terms, and so it can cause a lot of cash flow heartache if you do not have accurate invoicing. And then putting it in the specific format. And again, I mean, what we've got is some service companies that we're doing work for. And when they're doing oil well servicing, they need to have those invoices in a specific format. We've got certain oil service companies that got invoices that are 50 pages long, and they're dealing with every line item for every well site and what they did, what piece of equipment, what employee was there, what inventory got allocated to it, was it at the specific rate? And so the oil companies require this at a specific format. And this is getting worse now, because what's happening is that these companies are starting to use Cortex or Open Invoice, where they require those invoices to come across in an electronic format. So you're actually doing not only your own invoicing, but you have to tie it into the actual oil company's account payable invoicing as well. All right, I have my first question. And so it's with regards to the Cortex. And so, yes, all you have to do is you can integrate the system so that when you produce an invoice, it can link across straight into the Cortex system. But Cortex requires a certain format, and you have to have it formatted in that specific format to make it work. Okay? And then difficult to prepare and track quotes. And so the oil and gas companies, again, the systems allow you to prepare quotes. They allow you to keep track of them. They can you can put on the quotes the time dates as long as they're good for. And so you can go back in and create the quotes and then convert it over into a job very easily. All right. So yes, there's some other issues, but these are kind of the major ones that the oil and gas companies are having. All right. Okay, so let's talk about the workflow stuff, and we're talking about first the initialization and creation of jobs. And so understand, we can create a job very, very easily. We can come in here, we can say, I want to create a new job, and is it a quotation or is it an actual job? But all I have to do is just click on this box and it changes it from a quotation to a job. Or I can say, listen, I want to go grab this stuff, so what information do I need? So I can take it from prior quotations, I can get it from prior other jobs, I can get it from other templates that we're talking about. And we'll go through the templates in just a second, but understand that once I create this, all I have to do is modify the quotation for the individual pieces for this particular job, and then it will assist me in building all of the detail. And it's going to take the actual current invoice pricing. It's going to take the current labor rates. It's going to take the current subcontractor rates. It's going to take the current standard charges for permits and stuff. All of that is going to move across, so it's going to make it so that we can do that tracking and creation of a quote very easily. And so it can reduce down this problem with setting that stuff up. Okay? So let's move into the next one, and on the initialization stage from equipment. And so this is specific more for, again, to the oil and gas industry, but it can be for other service industries as well. But see, tracking of equipment, and so whether it's internal equipment or customer equipment. And so what we're talking about in here is we set up a site for a well that says, by the way, this is the compressor that's on the site, if we're an electrical guy, right? Or if we're going out there to service it, here's the serial number for all of the customer equipment on that site, so your service techs know exactly what's going on. And or we can create internal equipment for our own self, whether we're renting it or allocating it to a site, so we can track our internal equipment as well. And so all of our equipment gets set up, and then we can certainly keep track of it by where it is, where is it actually sitting right now, what are the serial numbers involved, is there warranty on it. So all of that information can be tracked for every piece of equipment, whether it's a customer or our own equipment. And then, of course, we can also do maintenance schedules. We don't have time to deal with that today, but we can have full maintenance tracking for all of this equipment as well. Okay? All right, so let's talk about the initialization with templates. As I was saying with regards to the quotes, we can set up these various templates, and you set it up in the format that you guys want. So the bottom end is that, so this one's set up to travel to site. This is talking about diagnostic. This is talking about general service. You would set this up for your service jobs. You would set it up for service jobs for well sites. You'd set it up for service jobs for pipelines. You would set it up for service jobs for whatever type of work you're doing. And then once you've got this stuff set up, you would come in and say, oh, by the way, I'm doing a pipeline type work. Therefore, here's the template that I want to use for that particular job. Okay? So what this was going to do is that it's certainly going to make it so we can cost the system very easily, because we've got current budgets, we've got the variance, we've got actually the real data coming in here that we can see costed at any time. So we're going to be able to maintain those costs. We're going to be able to help with the accountability for that, because the project managers are going to be able to see this if you give them access as well, right? So the templates get created, the templates then become jobs. Okay? Good. So let's move into the other side of it, the initialization with agreements. So again, we've got the pricing and everything set up by customer, then we can have it set up by sites, but on top of that, we can also have agreements. So if you have an agreement with Encana or one of the larger oil companies, right, then you would say, okay, this is using an overriding based on an agreement, so it will go and override all of the costs and the billing rates for labor, for subcontractors, for equipment, and move it over to this contract agreement. And these can be set up for a specific period. They can set up by a billing cycle, or they can have continuous covering if you're doing support agreements for these guys. So yes, these are very, very powerful. I see another question. And the question is that can we set up support contracts for agreement for well sites? And the answer is absolutely yes. Okay. So what you would do is you would set up the agreement. You'd say, okay, what is covered underneath the agreement? And as soon as you clicked on that site, then it would override to this agreement that you've got set up and or the billing codes that are in there. Okay? Good. All right. So let's talk about planning. And so at the planning stage, this is when, okay, we're sitting down and okay, what is the scope of the job that we need to get done, right? And you've done that partly in the templates and you've set that all up. But this is where we move it into, okay, let's start scheduling all of the employees. And you see this has got a employee clicked, the equipment clicked, and the subcontractors clicked. What it's talking about in here is you can have what do you want to have when you're looking at this schedule on here so I can schedule all of these guys across. So the employees, the equipment, the rental equipment, the subcontractors, all of it will come across and I can drop and drag this stuff to anybody that I want and keep track and plan on my scheduling. And this can be done well in advance. So if I'm doing this in July, I can put it in right now so when I get to July, the guys cannot double book that piece of equipment or the labor. Okay? Good. So let's move into the planning from different views. And so we can have different views of this planning as well. So this is looking at it from a Gantt chart. So you can again see when the job is supposed to be done, when is it supposed to be completed, who's supposed to be working on it, what pieces of equipment are being worked on it. I mean, this is a Volkswagen transporter van being worked on. You can have it, you know, trailers, or you can have anything put in here. You set up, this is your internal equipment that you would have allocated to this job. But understand, in this planning stage, I can move this and just drop it and drag it and say it's not going to happen here, it's going to happen at a different time, or it's going to happen at a different date, and it's going to move everything to that date. Which kind of moves over into the next thing, which is, so this is the planning where we're sitting down and just making sure that we've got everything, all of the resources all planned out. Now, no plans are perfect, right? So we move into this next stage and we're saying, okay, but executing, modifying plans, because here's all of the schedules that we built. I want to move this, and I just drop it and move it over to here, and what it does is it moves everything, all the time, all the equipment that has to move for that job over to the different time. Or if Mike Roberts is sick, what will happen is I can just say, okay, I'm going to click on this, reallocate it to a different employee, and I can have this set up so all of the employees' work that was supposed to be done for the day is going to go over to a different employee. Okay? So this is just trying to give you this look and feel to drop and drag, replacing your whiteboards with an electronic whiteboard so that you've got everything on view and you can make modifications very easily. Okay? So the important stuff is this, is that once you've got this stuff, because we're moving into the executing, and so understand is when we're doing the scheduling, we can convert a schedule over into a time card, which makes it much more effective because somebody doesn't have to re-enter the time card. Number two, it also makes it more accurate because it's less likely to make a mistake. If we've already got it allocated to the right job and to the right phase in the schedule, then the time card is likely right. But what we're looking at is a view for time collection from the executing stage now for a workstation. So if you're actually working on a computer where you can come in and you can set up employee equipment, subcontractor time, we can allocate inventory to this thing, and we're putting it to specific phases and to a specific job. And so we're tying it down and we're collecting all of that data very, very easily. Okay? So then let's do it from a different point of view. So same collection routine, but now let's do this remote, right? So instead of having it on a workstation, let's do it on a tablet. And we're coming in. This is now a web-based access. So it's web, and it doesn't care whether you're using an iPad, a Microsoft Surface. It doesn't care what kind of a system. All it needs to be is a supported web browser. And so in here, I can do time collection, right? Again, for the employees or the equipment. And so I can collect all of that time very easily out in the field. Okay? So this is when I'm online. I've actually got access into the internet, or I've got a cell coverage where I've got access into the system. I can just come in here and enter my time. So again, very, very easy. This makes it far more accurate. So my invoicing is going to be more accurate. This is going to make it so that I've got the accountability. So I'm keeping track of all my employees. And again, these time cards not only go into the job costing, but they also flow straight across over into the payroll as well. So really, the accuracy is going to go up significantly. But there's other ways to do it as well, because we're not always in communication. So we go to the next piece and we're saying, okay, this is the executing stage again, but this is when we're not connected. So what we can do is we can download this software to your tablets, where now you've got it where you can take it out into the site. You don't have any communication, but I still got access to all of the jobs. I still got access to all the breakdowns that I need to do, and I can also get sign-offs. So I can sign off with those other web-based solutions as well, but this one will also take sign-offs out in the field. So at these well sites, the oil companies specifically require you to have sign-offs by the employees out there to make sure it's being done correctly. And so the bottom end is that this allows for you guys to keep track of all of the stuff, so that you can have the sign-offs out in the field by the oil field employees. All of that is embedded in here, and as soon as you bring this tablet back and you hook it up to your systems, the system will upload all of this information, and the signature is embedded in there, so that you can have all of the documentation that you require for the oil and gas companies to make sure that you were there, who was working on the job, and everything was done the way that they wanted it. Okay? All right. So let's move into the next one. And what we want to talk about now is we can use the same functionality for the monitoring of a job. And so in here, what we've got is, this is again a tablet, and so from the tablet I can log into the system, and I can actually go in and get all of the information, so my project managers can take a look at this stuff, and we can see it all of the time. And so they can actually take a look, and I apologize for that phone ringing, but I can take a look at this job and see what's going on, what is being charged to it, whether it's inventory, whether it's subcontractors or everything. But this certainly gives the project managers the accountability to see what's happening to the job as it's processing, right, as it's moving along. They can see whether it's right or wrong. They can make the adjustments as it's going into the system, okay? So this allows you to do the monitoring of that system and controlling to make sure the right stuff's there. Okay. Then we move into, okay, let's talk about monitoring and closing. So this is just another template that we're looking at, and this one's got tasks that are involved in here. So we can have it broke down by employees, we can have, or by phase. Again, we're talking about initial solution design, right? The business review, this is a proposal, this is, right, the scope documents, this is the project plan, and then we've got all of these tasks involved in here. And so each one of these tasks can have actually an original date that we thought and time involved in it, plus it'll have the revised time, plus it has the actuals coming in here. What that does for us is it allows us to make sure if the tasks are being done on time, then it's very likely that the phase is going to be done on time. And if the phases are being done on time, it's very likely that the project is going to be done on time. So this helps us with the monitoring of a job to make sure that it's being done correctly. We can also modify these task lines so that you've got the detail on who in the individual piece of equipment, or who is the individual that's actually assigned to this, and what percentage is complete. So we can modify this a whole lot, but what it does is it gives us a lot of information to allow us to monitor and maintain that job. It also allows us to take a look at the closing phase, because at the closing phase, we're taking a look and say, okay, the whole project is being done now. What got done on time? What didn't get done on time? Did we actually solve the problem that we said we were going to solve for the customer? Was the well serviced correctly when it was supposed to be serviced, right? And so this allows us to give all of that information so we can see what happened. Okay? So then invoicing. And so again, at the oil and gas companies, these need to be in a very specific format, and we can change them to any format you want, because this is written in Crystal Reports, and Crystal Reports will let us do anything we want with this invoice. But the main thing is this, is that we know that the information is accurate, because if we've got agreements, if we've got inventory linked in here, we know that the hours are correct because time cards are coming in. We know that the charges are correct on the rates because it's based on either an agreement or based on the internal setup that we've got for each site. So the accuracy is absolutely dead on every time. It cannot be wrong without actually having it set up wrong. Okay? All right. Then let's go into closing at the final costing. And so we're talking about I want to be able to see what's going on with each one of my jobs, what's the revenue, what's the cost. And so this is just a canned report that comes out of the system, and it's talking about at each one of the levels, revenue 750, cost 400. Labor was blank, right? But you can see down here, here's the revenue that we got is $1,000, and it only cost us 115. So great, we're really getting a good markup on that. But this allows you to break it down by subcontractor, by items, everything as far as what's going on with your job. And you can break it down by phases as well. So if you've got a phase that, all right, I'm going to be doing the service work on a particular well site, what did it cost me for this? What did it cost me for the individual pieces? Okay? Good. And so now let's talk about the improvement phase. So we're moving into this continuous improvement. This also can be used because this is available all the time. So really you could use this for the monitoring phases as well. You could use it for the closing phases. We're looking at it from the improvement phase just because what I want to do is just let you know that even though we can get it all the time, this is when you're taking a look at the final stage and you're breaking down your jobs and you're saying, okay, on the designing of that office, this $2,272, what is it? I can double click on that and it'll take me right down to the detail on this. And I can have this dashboard, and this is what they call them when you've got multiple screens that you're looking at. I can have this in any format that you want. So what is important to you, I can make a modification, and this can be different for project managers. This can be different for owners where you're looking at all of the projects. And so I can set these up so that it only gives me the information that actually is important to me. And let's go a little bit deeper with this improvement stuff. And so this is just looking at it with a little more detail on a job. And again, so I can move this around. If I don't want to look at the contract, I want to look at the project, I can just drop and move this over to this side, and it will change this whole form so that it takes this and moves it over and makes it first as project. And so you'd have to kind of see the concept, but it's a drop and drag. It's almost an idiot-proof report where you can't break anything with it, but you can look at it from different terms. And so if I'm the project manager and I want to look at the individual labor, I can come over here and I can double-click on that $480 and I can see exactly who charged time against that job and its management labor. Okay? So it gives me a whole lot of power to be able to look at and drill down to the specifics for the job. I see I have another question, and the question is that is this format adaptable? And the absolutely yes. I mean, so this is just a standard format that we've got written that you can have, but you can have this in any format that you want, and then once it's built, you can change it to whatever you want. You cannot break anything. You can just go in and look at the information so that you can get the details that you want. Okay? Good. All right, so let's look at it from improvement from productivity as well. Because what you want to do is you want to improve, you want to get better. And how do we do that? Well, I want to see what's the productivity for my equipment? What is the productivity for my employees? What's the productivity for everything in the organization? And so this is just giving you a different view on that. We can have it on a dashboard if you wanted to. But the bottom line is it's just a report saying, okay, how productive is each one of my individuals that I want to track? Okay? Good. All right. So really this is what we're trying to solve, guys, is it's trying to solve this triangle for us for our job management. And so the scope is what does the oil company want us to do for a particular well site? What do they want us to do for the overall company? What is the scope that needs to be done, right? What do we need to get done for the job? Then what is the time frame that oil company wants us to have for that particular job? And what are the costs that we're going to charge for it, right? And so it's maintaining this equilateral triangle, because if we maintain an equilateral triangle and we keep all of these things in balance, right, our quality of the job is higher. And if our quality is better, then the oil companies are much more satisfied with the work that we're doing. They're going to hire us again. So all these service management solutions are doing is trying to help us maintain scope, time, and cost and balance it so that we can keep track and make money ourselves, and the oil companies also getting their jobs done. All right? So is it right for you? And so is it right for you really gets down to a couple questions. Is that what is the cost of not solving the problems? What, those issues that we talked about at the beginning here. What is the cost of not having project or jobs costed accurately, so you know the revenue and the cost that's coming in? What is the cost of not knowing whether your equipment is making or losing you money? What is the cost of not being able to hold your project managers accountable, right? You're promoting the wrong guys, right? What are the cost implications, right, of not having process controls in place, right? I mean, so the jobs are not done on time. So the manager or so each one of the people, your customers, whether they're at the well site, right, whoever they are, if you're not doing the jobs on time or getting its stuff done, are they going to hire you again? Or they're going to say, listen, we don't really want Maverick to be there anymore because Maverick, you guys are just not doing the jobs on time. We got to find somebody else. We've got to have those tanks delivered at the correct time, or we're not putting up with this anymore. So the cost that can be not having process controls in place can be huge. And then what are the potential benefits of having these enhanced processes? Well, if we're able to schedule the jobs, we don't double book them, so we won't look like goofs when we cannot deliver when we promise, right? What are the benefits? Well, I'm going to have all of this information that I'm going to be able to drill down, so I'm going to know whether I should be increasing my costs. I'm going to know whether I cannot deliver those tanks on time because it's just costing me more for diesel fuel, right? I mean, mind you, the fuel prices are coming down right now, but those are very likely to go back up again. But the bottom line is it really depends. And so what you have to do is take a look at these cost savings and the benefits that you're going to generate out of here, and then take a look at it compared to what is the cost of putting in a new system. Okay? And this is where ASEMA is a little bit different because we do fixed pricing. And what we mean by that is we actually say this is the all-in cost. We don't say, by the way, this is an estimate. We tell you what the price is, and we lock it in. We say we're going to solve these problems, and this is the cost of it. So it allows you to be able to get a very easy return on investment because you say, here's the benefits, here's what the real costs are going to be. Okay? Good. So keys to success. And really, it's aligning the service management software with the business and organization strategy. It's critical that we do this. And so senior management buy-in has to be there. If the senior management is not bought in and they allow you to change systems or make modifications or not follow procedures, right, then the whole thing is doomed to fail, right? So they have to be committed. They have to be bought in. And they need to understand, number two, that the company is the ones that must be responsible for the improvement. ASEMA Solutions or anybody that is a consultant, all we are is the training wheels on a bicycle. You guys are going to have to ride the bicycle after we're gone. And so the bottom line is that you must understand that you are responsible for the improvement, and you have to understand that this project is yours. It's not going to be ours when you're trying to improve it. Okay? Companies also need to plan, set goals, provide appropriate feedback. What this is that if you've actually sat back when you're designing what the cost benefits, what the savings are, and we can help you with that. But when you define that stuff and what your improvement goals are, you see it gives us a target so we know where we're heading. It's not a moving target. It's something that we know specifically what we're trying to accomplish. It's critical to make sure that we actually obtain that for you. And then companies must understand that there's a huge impact on the organizational culture. If you've had a culture, especially in the oil and gas industries, where you've had these guys out working in the field all the time, they've been on their own all the time, they haven't had anybody looking over their shoulder, this is going to have an effect on them. They are not going to like it, but the problem is you have to explain it to them that this is going to help them as well as the organization, because everybody's going to see what's going on. Everybody's going to have the visibility to know what's available and what's required of them. And this is where you get into this, what is my role and what are the results that I need out of my role? And so as we define this stuff, it helps us. It doesn't hinder us. But it's a huge change on the culture, and sometimes these companies and the employees buck that and they don't like it. So keys to success, this is absolutely required to make it happen. All right? So now we're into the questions, so I will stop the recording there, but thank you very much for your time, and hopefully you can get your oil and gas service companies working effectively.